Price. The warning lights flashed across Commander Sarah Chen's visor as her mining vessel's sensors screamed to life. What should have been a routine extraction in the Kuiper Belt had just become anything but routine. The artifact they'd uncovered pulsed with an energy signature unlike anything she'd seen in 15 years of deep space mining. "All teams, fall back to safety positions," she ordered, her voice steady despite the growing unease in her chest. The massive drilling platform hung suspended in the void, its titanium arms still wrapped around the asteroid that had, until moments ago, seemed like just another rock in space. "Henderson, what are we looking at?" "Commander, these readings," her chief engineer's voice crackled through the comm. "It's like nothing in our database. The energy signature it's almost like it's waking up." Sarah watched as the artifact's surface began to shift, ancient patterns emerging from what had appeared to be solid metal. The geometric designs reminded her of circuit boards, but they moved like liquid mercury, reforming and restructuring before her eyes. "All teams, maintain distance. No one touches that thing until way." Her order was cut short as a burst of energy erupted from the artifact, bathing the entire mining operation in a brilliant purple light. The mining platform's systems flickered, and for a moment, Sarah felt her suit's power supply falter. "Status report," she barked, already moving toward the emergency controls. "Systems recovering, Commander, but—" Henderson paused, and Sarah could hear the fear in his voice. "We're picking up something big, really big, coming in fast from the outer system." Sarah pulled up the long-range scanners on her helmet display and felt her breath catch. A vessel was approaching, its design unlike anything humanity had encountered in their centuries of space exploration. It moved with impossible grace for its size, its hull gleaming with the same strange patterns they found on the artifact. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Mining Corporation vessel Hyperion," she broadcast on all frequencies. "We are conducting authorized mining operations in international space. Please identify yourself." The response came not in words, but in a sensation that made every human on the platform shiver simultaneously. It felt like ice running down their spines, like the moment before lightning strikes. Then a voice spoke, not through their communication systems, but somehow directly into their minds. "You meddle with things beyond your understanding, human children. The artifacts of the Zenith Empire are not meant for your kind." A figure materialized on their platform, tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. Kevan, first sentinel of the Zenith Empire, stood before them, their biomechanical armor making them tower over the humans present. "Commander Chen," Kevan spoke aloud this time, their voice carrying harmonics that made the metal deck plates vibrate. "You have activated an ancient beacon, one of many we placed to test those who would reach for the stars. Few species have ever found one. Fewer still have survived the activation." Sarah stepped forward, positioning herself between Kevan and her crew. "We had no way of knowing what it was. We're miners, not thieves or warriors." Kevan's eyes, multifaceted like a diamond, focused on Sarah. "Yet here you stand, showing neither fear nor submission." Curious. They moved closer, their armor adjusting with liquid smoothness. "Your species is young, barely out of its cradle, yet you've managed to activate technology that has destroyed civilizations thousands of years more advanced than yours. If we've trespassed, we apologize," Sarah said firmly. "But my people were just doing their jobs. Whatever punishment you think is warranted should fall on me alone." Kevan made a sound that might have been laughter, but it felt like static electricity in the air. "You misunderstand, Commander Chen. This is not about punishment. This is about potential." They gestured, and a holographic display appeared between them, showing countless stars and systems. "The Zenith Empire has watched your kind for some time, debating whether humans were ready for contact. You've just forced our hand." "Ready for contact?" Sarah's eyes narrowed. "You've been watching us." "Of course, we watch all emerging spacefaring races. Most destroy themselves before reaching this far. Some we have to assist in their ending when they prove too dangerous to allow further development. Kavan's armor shifted, revealing more of their alien features. But you humans, you continue to surprise us. The artifact pulsed again, and this time Sarah noticed how Kavan's armor resonated with it. The beacon doesn't just detect technological capability, does it? She asked, her mind racing. It's testing something else. Kavan's expression changed in a way Sarah couldn't quite interpret. Very observant, Commander. The beacons test worthiness, not just the ability to find them, but the capacity to understand them, to respect them, to fear them appropriately. They paused, studying her. Most species either cower in terror or attempt to weaponize what they find immediately. You did neither. What happens now? Sarah asked, knowing the answer would change humanity's future forever. Now, Kavan said, their voice carrying both threat and promise, we determine if your species is ready to join the greater community of space, or if you need to be contained. And you, Commander Chen, will be the instrument of that determination. Sarah felt the weight of billions of lives settling on her shoulders. What exactly does that mean? It means you will face the trials of ascension. As the one who activated the beacon, you have earned the right to prove humanity's worth. Kavan's armor rippled. Should you succeed, your species will gain knowledge and opportunities beyond your imaginings. Should you fail, they left the threat unspoken. And if I refuse, then we contain humanity's expansion now, while we still can. Your choice, Commander, but know that once the trials begin, there is no stopping until they are complete, one way or another. Sarah looked back at her crew, at the mining platform that had been her home for the past year, at the distant spark of Earth barely visible from here. Everything she'd ever known, everything humanity had built, now rested on what she decided next. Before I answer, she said, meeting Kavan's alien gaze, tell me one thing, has any species ever passed these trials? Kavan's response was immediate. No, none have completed them. Many have died trying. Some came close enough that we granted them limited contact privileges, but full acceptance into the galactic community. That has never been achieved. Sarah smiled then, a small, determined expression that made Kavan tilt their head in curiosity. Then I accept, because if there's one thing you should know about humans, it's that we live for proving the impossible possible. The artifact pulsed one final time, and Sarah could have sworn she saw something like approval in Kavan's otherworldly features. Very well, Commander Chen. The trials begin now. And may your confidence be matched by your capability for all humanity's sake. As Kavan spoke these words, the mining platform was enveloped in a field of energy, and Sarah felt reality shift around them. The first trial was beginning, and with it, humanity's greatest test had begun. Whether they were ready or not, First Contact's price would be paid in full. The last thing Sarah saw before the light consumed them was Kavan's expression, not one of superiority or disdain, but of genuine curiosity. Perhaps, she thought, that was the first victory already won. They had made the zenith wonder. The challenge. The light faded, and Sarah found herself standing in what appeared to be a vast chamber. Gone was her mining platform, her crew, even her familiar environment suit. Instead, she wore some kind of adaptive bodysuit that shifted and adjusted to her movements with unsettling precision. Welcome to the Crucible, Kavan's voice echoed through the chamber. They emerged from a shimming portal, their armor now adorned with glowing symbols of authority. This is where all species face their first trial. Sarah took in her surroundings. The chamber's walls seemed to breathe, patterns of light pulsing through them like blood through veins. What happened to my crew? They are safe. Return to your vessel, which now orbits at a safe distance. Kavan moved with liquid grace across the floor, which rippled at their touch. The trials are for you alone, Commander Chen, as it has always been. You still haven't explained exactly what these trials entail, Sarah said, keeping her voice steady despite the alien environment trying to overwhelm her senses. Kavan's multifaceted eyes glimmered. The trials test more than mere physical capability or intelligence. They probe the very essence of what makes a species worthy of joining the galactic community. They gestured, and a holographic display materialized between them. There are 3 trials: mind, body, and spirit. But know this, they are not what they seem. Sarah studied the display, noting how it responded to her gaze. Let me guess, no one's ever passed because everyone approaches them exactly as you've labeled them. A sound like crystalline wind chimes filled the air, Kavan's laughter. Perceptive, Commander. Already you show more promise than many who came before. Their expression shifted to something more serious. But perception alone will not save you. The chamber walls suddenly blazed with light, and Sarah found herself surrounded by floating symbols and equations, each more complex than the last. Your first trial begins now. Solve the unsolvable. Sarah stared at the mathematical symphony around her. The equations seemed to mock her with their complexity, some utilizing mathematical concepts she'd never seen before, but something felt off about the whole setup. Before I start, she said carefully, tell me something, Kavan. Why do you call yourselves the Zenith Empire? Kavan tilted their head, armor shifting like liquid mercury. We are the peak of evolution, the highest achievement possible in this galaxy. All other species exist below us, striving to reach our level of perfection. Sarah nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. That's what I thought. Your biggest weakness isn't your technology or your power, it's your certainty. Explain, Kavan demanded, then a voice carrying an edge of both irritation and curiosity. You've set these trials up based on your understanding of perfection, your definition of advancement. Sarah walked through the floating equations, studying them not as problems to be solved, but as pieces of a larger puzzle. But you've never considered that your perspective might be just that, a perspective. The equations continued to swirl around her as she spoke. These problems, they're unsolvable using traditional mathematics, because they're not actually mathematical problems, are they? They're problems of perception. Kavan remained silent, but their armor rippled with increased intensity. Sarah reached out and touched one of the equations, watching as it responded to her contact. The real test isn't finding the solution, it's realizing that the solution exists outside the framework you've provided. She began moving the equations, not trying to solve them, but rearranging them in space. As she did, patterns emerged, not mathematical ones, but patterns of light and shadow, of space and dimension. Humans have something that your empire seems to have forgotten in its pursuit of perfection, Sarah continued, her movements becoming more confident. We embrace chaos. We find beauty in imperfection. And most importantly, we never stop questioning our own assumptions. The equations began to align, forming not a mathematical solution but an image, a 3-dimensional representation of the very chamber they stood in, but with layers of reality peeled back to reveal something underneath. Your trial isn't about solving these equations, Sarah said, stepping back to admire her work. It's about recognizing that the equations themselves are a distraction. The real puzzle is seeing what they're hiding. Kavan's armor had gone completely still, their eyes fixed on the image Sarah had created. In 10,000 years, no species has ever. They paused, composing themselves. They all tried to solve the mathematics. Because that's what you expected them to do, Sarah replied. But humans, we have a bad habit of not doing what's expected of us. The chamber hummed with energy as the image Sarah had created began to pulse in sync with the walls. Suddenly, a doorway appeared where none had been before, revealed by the pattern she'd uncovered. Kavan moved closer, their presence carrying a new weight. You have passed the first trial, Commander Chen, but do not let this success fool you. What comes next will test more than your ability to think differently. Before we continue, Sarah said, I have a question for you, Kavan. Are you sure you're ready for what it means if a human actually passes all 3 trials? Because I don't think you are. Your confidence borders on arrogance, human. No, Sarah smiled. It borders on understanding. Every time I surprise you, your armor ripples. Your voice changes pitch. You're not just administering these trials, you're learning from them. And I think that terrifies you. For the first time, Kavan's composed demeanor cracked slightly. You presume much, Commander. I observe much, she corrected, and I think these trials might be testing more than just humanity's worthiness. The chamber began to shift around them, preparing for the next trial. Kavan's voice carried a new undertone as they spoke. Perhaps, Commander Chen, that is precisely why no species has ever passed them all. As the environment transformed, Sarah couldn't help but notice how Kavan kept their distance now, watching her with what could only be described as wary fascination. The game had changed. She wasn't just proving humanity's worth anymore. She was challenging the very foundations of the Zenith Empire's beliefs. The second trial awaited, but Sarah had already achieved something unprecedented. She had made one of the Zenith question their own certainty. And in an empire built on absolute truths, doubt was a dangerous thing indeed. Breaking the rules. The chamber morphed into a vast arena, its walls now resembling polished obsidian. The air itself seemed to crackle with potential energy, and Sarah felt the adaptive bodysuit tighten slightly, preparing for whatever challenge lay ahead. The second trial tests the limits of physical existence, Kavan announced, their voice carrying an edge of anticipation. Many species have broken themselves against this challenge, believing brute force or advanced technology would see them through. Sarah watched as the obsidian walls began to emit a soft purple glow. And what did they miss? That is for you to discover, Kavan replied, but their tone had changed. Where before there had been only cold authority, now there was a hint of genuine curiosity. Though I suspect you will approach this differently as well. The arena floor suddenly split open, revealing a complex maze of floating platforms suspended over what appeared to be a void of swirling energy. Each platform pulsed with different colors and patterns, some solid, others barely visible. Cross the void, Kavan instructed. Reach the far side within the time limit. Simple enough. Sarah studied the platforms, noting how they shifted and moved in patterns that seemed random at first glance. What's the catch? The platforms respond to different energy frequencies. Touch one with the wrong resonance. Kavan gestured, and a small demonstration drone appeared. It landed on a platform that immediately dissolved, sending it plummeting into the void. Most species spend hours calculating trajectories and energy patterns. You have 15 minutes. Sarah walked to the edge of the starting platform, her mind racing. The drone's fate made it clear. This wasn't just about agility or timing. But something about Kavan's words nagged at her. You said the platforms respond to energy frequencies, she mused aloud. But you never said they had to be external frequencies, did you? Kavan's armor rippled, but they remained silent. Sarah closed her eyes, focusing on the bodysuit she wore. Since arriving in the Crucible, she'd felt it adjusting, responding to her movements and possibly her biological signals. The suit isn't just for protection, she said, opening her eyes. It's an interface. Without warning, she took a running leap toward the nearest platform. Just before landing, she focused intensely on calming her heart rate, steadying her breathing. The platform, which had been flickering uncertainly, solidified under her feet. The frequencies, she called out to Kavan, they're not just about energy signatures, they're about state of being. Heart rate, neural patterns, even emotional states. Kavan moved to keep pace with her along the arena's edge. An interesting theory. Sarah jumped to the next platform, this time deliberately raising her heart rate and focusing on feelings of excitement. The previously unstable platform became solid on contact. Not a theory, she said, already planning her next move. The Zenith Empire doesn't just value technological advancement. You value consciousness, awareness, the ability to control one's own state of being. She continued across the void, each jump accompanied by a deliberate shift in her physical and mental state. Platforms that seemed impossible to reach became stable stepping stones as she matched their frequencies not with technology, but with her own biological responses. Most species try to solve this with external tools, she called out between jumps. They miss that the solution is internal. Kavan's voice carried a new weight. You understand more than you should, Commander Chen. No, Sarah replied, leaping to another platform. I understand exactly what I need to. Humans have spent millennia exploring the connection between mind and body. We may not have your technology, but we understand that consciousness itself is a tool. She was more than halfway across now, moving with increasing confidence. Each platform responded to different combinations of physical and mental states: fear, calm, exertion, meditation. The suit amplified these signals, but the source was purely human. Your species, Kavan started, then paused as Sarah executed a particularly impressive synchronization with a complex pattern of platforms. You approach challenges unlike any we have encountered. Sarah landed on a platform that required a perfect balance of tension and relaxation. Because we've never stopped evolving, Kavan. Your empire reached what you considered perfection and stopped. Humans were still changing, still growing. She was nearing the end now, but the final platforms were the most unstable yet. They flickered in and out of existence, their patterns seemingly random. These last ones, she said, studying them carefully, they don't just require specific states. They require impossible combinations. Fear and courage simultaneously. Chaos and order. No species has ever, Kavan began. Good thing humans are walking contradictions then, Sarah interrupted. She took a deep breath, then did something completely unexpected. Instead of trying to match the platform's frequencies, she began emitting her own unique pattern. The platforms responded, reorganizing themselves to match her frequency instead of the other way around. Impossible, Kavan breathed. Sarah made the final jump, landing safely on the far side with minutes to spare. No, Kavan, not impossible, just unprecedented. There's a difference. The void closed behind her, the platforms disappearing into nothingness. Kavan appeared beside her, that armor shifting with barely contained agitation. You did not simply complete the trial, they said. You changed its fundamental nature. Because that's what humans do, Sarah replied. We don't just adapt to our environment, we make it adapt to us. Sometimes that means breaking the rules. Sometimes it means rewriting them entirely. Kavan was silent for a long moment. When they spoke again, their voice carried a mix of concern and fascination. The final trial, it was designed to be impossible, a test of acceptance, of knowing one's limitations. Sarah smiled. Then it sounds like exactly the kind of impossible humans specialize in. As the arena began to transform once again, Kavan moved closer than they had before. You should know, Commander Chen, that your success here has not gone unnoticed. There are those within the Empire who are disturbed by your methods. Are you one of them? Sarah asked directly. Kavan's armor rippled with colors she hadn't seen before. I am uncertain, and that, perhaps, is the most disturbing development of all. The final trial loomed ahead, but Sarah had already accomplished something unprecedented. She had made a member of the Zenith Empire admit to uncertainty. As the chamber prepared for the ultimate challenge, she couldn't help but wonder if she was really being tested at all, or if she was actually teaching them something they had forgotten long ago. The uprising within. The chamber's transformation was interrupted by a burst of crimson energy. 3 new figures materialized, Zenith warriors, their armor adorned with symbols of authority that even Sarah could recognize as significant. First Sentinel Kavan, the central figure's voice resonated with barely contained fury. You have allowed this to proceed far enough. Kavan's posture shifted subtly, their armor darkening to a deep midnight blue. High Marshal Veyrak, the trials are protected by ancient law. You have no authority to interfere. Ancient law did not anticipate this. Aberration. Veyrak's gaze fixed on Sarah, their crystalline eyes burning with cold contempt. This human doesn't complete the trials, she corrupts them, changes them. Each success threatens millennia of tradition. Sarah stood her ground, studying the new arrivals. Where Kevan's armor flowed like liquid mercury, these warriors' armor seemed rigid, unyielding. Tradition, she said clearly, or control. Virak's head snapped toward her. You dare speak to me, lesser being. I dare quite a lot, apparently, Sarah replied, noting how Kevan had positioned themselves slightly between her and the other zenith, including questioning why a supposedly perfect empire feels so threatened by change. Kevan, one of Virak's companions, stepped forward. Surely you see the danger. This human's methods, they challenge the very foundations of our society. Already, word of her successes spreads through the empire. Questions are being asked that have not been asked in thousands of years. Perhaps, Kevan responded, their voice carrying a new strength. Those questions need to be asked, council member Cyril. When was the last time the Zenith Empire truly grew, truly evolved? Virak's armor bristled with spikes of crystalline energy. You speak of heresy. I speak of truth, Kevan countered. I have watched this human approach our most challenging trials with methods we never conceived. Not because she is superior, but because she thinks differently, because her species never stopped questioning, never stopped seeking new ways. Sarah took a step forward. Your empire calls itself Zenith, the peak, the highest point. But you know what happens at the peak? You stop climbing. You stop growing. Humans, we don't believe in peaks. We believe in horizons. Always something new to discover, always another height to reach. Silence. Virak commanded, but Sarah could see how their words had affected the other council members. Subtle shifts in their armor, slight changes in posture. The Zenith weren't as unified as they appeared. The final trial must not proceed, Cyril declared, but their voice carried uncertainty. The risk is too great. The risk, Kevan responded, or the possibility that we were wrong. That perfection isn't a destination but a journey. Virak moved with startling speed, energy crackling around their form. If you will not see reason, first sentinel, then you will be removed. The human will be contained, and order will be maintained. The chamber's walls pulsed with warning signs as Virak raised their hand, preparing to strike. But before they could act, Sarah did something that shocked everyone present. She laughed. You still don't get it, do you? She shook her head, genuine amusement in her voice. Everything about these trials, about your entire empire, is based on the idea of individual achievement, proving oneself worthy, standing alone. She gestured around the chamber. But humans, we're not strong because we stand alone. We're strong because we stand together. As if in response to her words, the chamber's walls began to shimmer, displaying images from Earth's history. Moments of cooperation, of different cultures coming together, of humans supporting each other through impossible challenges. Those are forbidden archives, Cyril gasped. How? Because she understands something we forgot, Kevan said quietly. The trials aren't just testing the individual, they're testing what they represent. Their armor had begun to pulse in sync with the chamber's walls, and she represents a species that has mastered something we abandoned, the strength of diversity, of change, of growth through cooperation. Virak's energy blast never came. Instead, the High Marshal found themselves confronting something they had never expected: doubt. The chamber itself seemed to respond to Sarah's presence, ancient systems awakening to new possibilities. You fear change, Sarah addressed all the Zenith present. You've built an empire on the idea of achieving perfection. But true perfection isn't static. It's not about reaching a final form, it's about having the courage to keep evolving, to keep learning. The chamber hummed with energy as more Zenith began to materialize, observers from across the empire, drawn by the unprecedented events unfolding. Sarah's words echo through their collective consciousness, challenging centuries of rigid thinking. The final trial, Kevan announced, their voice carrying authority that even Veyrak couldn't challenge, will proceed, not because our laws demand it, but because we must all bear witness to what comes next. Veyrak's armor had dulled, its once brilliant surface now clouded with uncertainty. You would risk everything we have built. No, Kayvan replied, moving to stand firmly beside Sarah. We risk everything we have become to remember everything we could be. The chamber began its delayed transformation, preparing for the final trial. But now the air crackled with more than just energy. It sparked with the potential for change, for evolution, for a new understanding between two very different species. Sarah caught Kayvan's eye. You knew, didn't you? You knew the trials weren't just about testing humanity's worth. I suspected, Kayvan admitted, but I never imagined. They paused, their armor swirling with new patterns. You have already changed us, Commander Chen. The question now is, how much further will that change go? As the final trial began to take shape around them, Sarah smiled. That depends on whether your empire is ready to learn what humans have known all along. The most beautiful things in the universe aren't perfect. They're perfectly imperfect, always growing, always evolving. The stage was set for the final challenge, but the real test had become clear. Not whether humanity was worthy of joining the galactic community, but whether the Zenith Empire was ready to remember how to grow. Defiance and understanding. The chamber's final transformation revealed something unexpected. Nothing. The vast space had become an endless void, without reference points or boundaries. Only Sarah and Kayvan remained visible, suspended in the nothingness, while the other Zenith observers had vanished from view. Welcome, a new voice echoed through the void, to the truth of emptiness. Sarah turned to Kayvan. Not exactly what I was expecting for a final trial. No one ever expects this, Kayvan replied, their armor reflecting the void around them. The final trial has driven many species to madness. They expect grand challenges, tests of might or wisdom. Instead, they face this. The voice spoke again, ancient and powerful. Zenith Empire, you have brought us another candidate. State your judgment. Kayvan's response was immediate, but carried an unfamiliar tone of uncertainty. The human Sarah Chen has completed the preliminary trials in unprecedented ways. She has demonstrated capabilities that challenge our understanding. And you, Kayvan, First Sentinel, the voice probed, how has this challenged your own beliefs? Before Kayvan could respond, Veyrak's voice cut through the void. The human corrupts our sacred trials. She twists their meaning, threatens our very foundation. Silence, the ancient voice commanded, and Veyrak's protests vanished. We would hear from the human herself. Sarah floated in the void, feeling the weight of countless unseen observers. Before I speak, I have a question of my own. Who are you? A ripple of something like amusement passed through the emptiness. In all our millennia of conducting these trials, no candidate has ever asked that first. They always begin by defending themselves, proving their worth. Because that's what you expect them to do, Sarah replied, just like the Zenith Empire expects perfection without questioning what perfection really means. The void shifted, and suddenly Sarah found herself surrounded by images, countless species facing this same trial, all trying desperately to prove themselves worthy, all failing. These trials, Sarah continued, studying the images, they're not really about testing other species, are they? They're about maintaining the Zenith Empire's belief in its own superiority. Explain, the voice commanded. Every trial was designed to be completed in a specific way, the Zenith way. When species fail, it reinforces the Empire's belief in their perfect method. But when someone succeeds differently, she gestured to the chaos her success had caused. It threatens everything they've built their society around. Kayvan's armor swirled with complex patterns. Commander Chen. No, Kayvan, Sarah interrupted gently. You know I'm right. Your empire reached a point where it stopped growing, stopped adapting. You called it perfection, but really it was stagnation. The void rippled again, and the ancient voice spoke with new interest. And what makes humans different? We embrace imperfection, Sarah said simply. We know we'll never reach some ultimate state of being, and that's our strength. We keep growing, keep changing, keep finding new ways to solve problems. Suddenly, the void filled with new images, Earth's history, but not the triumphant moments usually shown. Instead, it displayed humanity's failures, struggles, and recoveries. Yes, Sarah acknowledged, watching her species' hardships play out around her. We fail, we fall, we make terrible mistakes, but we learn from them. We change, we adapt, and most importantly, we help each other do the same. The ancient voice was silent for a long moment. Then, and what would you say to those who believe such constant change threatens stability? To those who fear what such adaptation might mean for established order? Sarah smiled. I'd say look at Kevan. Look at how they've changed just by observing something new, by being willing to question their own certainties. That's not weakness, it's the ultimate strength. Kevan moved closer to Sarah, their armor now displaying patterns she'd never seen before. She speaks truth, they declared. I am not the same being who began these trials. Her methods, her species' approach to challenges, they have awakened questions I had forgotten to ask. The void swirled with energy as Veyrak and other Zenith observers materialized again. This is exactly why she must be stopped, Veyrak declared. Already she corrupts one of our finest warriors with her chaos. No, Kevan countered, their voice carrying new authority. She reminds us of what we once were, before we decided we had reached perfection. We were explorers once, seekers of new understanding. When did we become so afraid of change? The ancient voice resonated through the void, and so the true purpose of the final trial reveals itself. Not to test the candidate, but to test the testers, to see if the Zenith Empire still remembers how to grow. Sorrow watched as realization spread through the assembled Zenith, their armor patterns shifting in waves of understanding and uncertainty. You're the original Zenith, she said suddenly. The ones who established these trials, you never meant them to become a way to prove superiority. At last, the voice said warmly, someone understands. The trials were meant to find species who could teach us, who could help us continue growing. Instead, they became a tool for stagnation. The void began to fill with light, and Sarah felt something changing in the very fabric of reality around them. The final trial wasn't ending, it was transforming, just as she had transformed the previous challenges. Commander Sarah Chen, the ancient voice declared, you have done more than pass our trials. You have reminded us of their true purpose. The question now becomes, are we, the Zenith Empire, worthy of the lessons you offer? As the light grew brighter, Sarah reached out and took Kevan's hand. There's only one way to find out, she said. Together. The void erupted with energy, and the greatest transformation in Zenith history began, not through conquest or technological advancement, but through the simple willingness to learn from something new, something wonderfully imperfect. Evolution of honor. The void coalesced into a vast amphitheater, ancient and new simultaneously, its architecture shifting and flowing like living mercury. Representatives from across the Zenith Empire materialized in tiered rings, their armor reflecting a rainbow of emotions and allegiances. At the center, Sarah and Kevan stood before the manifested forms of the original Zenith, beings of pure energy and consciousness who had long since transcended physical form. The time of change is upon us. The original Zenith's collective voice resonated through the space. For too long, we watched as our children forgot the true meaning of evolution. Veyrak stepped forward, their armor now dulled and brittle. You would have us abandon everything we are, everything we've built. No, Sarah interjected, understanding flowing through her. They want you to remember everything you were meant to be. The original Zenith's energy pulsed in approval. The human speaks truth. We did not achieve our current state through perfectionism, but through endless adaptation and growth. Kavan's armor swirled with new patterns as they addressed their fellow Zenith. Look at what we've become, so afraid of change that we would reject wisdom simply because it comes in an unexpected form. The amphitheater hummed with tension as millennia of certainty battled against the prospect of change. Sarah could see the division among the Zenith, some rigid with resistance, others already beginning to shift and flow like Kavan's armor. "I offer you a choice," Sarah said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "Not between perfection and chaos, but between stagnation and growth." She gestured, and the chamber filled with holographic displays of human history. "Look at our failures, our mistakes, our endless stumbles toward understanding. But look also at how each failure taught us something new." The original Zenith moved closer, that energy interacting with the historical displays. "We see in humanity what we once were, eternally curious, unafraid to fail, always reaching for new understanding." "But our power," another Zenith Council member protested, "our technological superiority means nothing without the wisdom to guide it," Kavan finished. "We called ourselves perfect, but we forgot that true perfection lies in the journey, not the destination." Suddenly, the amphitheater's walls began to crack, not with destruction but with transformation. Through the fissures, new energy poured in, carrying with it visions of possibility. The original Zenith had begun breaking down the barriers between what was and what could be. "The human passes all trials," they declared, "not because she conquered them, but because she showed us their true purpose." The question now becomes, can the Zenith Empire pass its own trial? Veyrak moved to object, but stopped as their armor began to respond to the new energy, flowing and changing against their will. This is chaos." "No," Sarah corrected gently. "This is evolution, the very thing your empire was founded upon." Kavan stepped forward, their armor now a brilliant tapestry of shifting patterns. "I propose a new path. Not as rulers of the galaxy, but as learners. Let us remember how to grow." The original Zenith's energy surged with approval, and so the first sentinel shows wisdom. But such change cannot be forced, it must be chosen. One by one, members of the Zenith Empire began to move. Some stepped forward, their armor flowing into new patterns. Others held back, rigid in their resistance, but the tide of change had begun. Commander Sarah Chen, the original Zenith, addressed her directly. "You have initiated a transformation we long hoped to see. The alliance we offer is not one of superior and inferior, but of mutual growth and understanding." Sarah smiled, feeling Kavan's presence beside her. "That's the only kind of alliance humans will accept anyway." The amphitheater began to pulse with new energy as the original Zenith spoke again, then a voice carrying both power and hope. "Let it be known across the galaxy, the age of stagnation ends. The Zenith Empire remembers its true purpose, not as the peak of evolution, but as eternal students of the cosmic dance." Around them, the very fabric of space began to shift and change. The rigid structures of Zenith technology softened, becoming more organic, more adaptive. Those who had chosen change found their armor transforming, becoming interfaces of pure possibility rather than symbols of unchanging power. "There will be resistance," Kavan warned, watching as Veyrak and their followers withdrew, their armor becoming ever more crystalline and rigid. "Not all will accept this new path." "Of course not," Sarah replied. "Change is never easy. But that's what makes it valuable." She turned to face the assembled Zenith. "Humans don't offer you perfection. We offer you partnership in the endless journey of discovery." The original Zenith's energy coalesced into a brilliant display, and so begins a new chapter in the galaxy's story, not through conquest or submission, but through the simple courage to question, to learn, to grow. As the amphitheater dissolved around them, returning them to normal space, Sarah found herself back on her mining platform. But everything had changed. The artifact that had started it all now pulsed with new purpose, not as a test, but as a beacon of cooperation between species. Kavan materialized beside her, their armor now a fluid symphony of possibility. You know, they said, a note of humor in their voice, when you first activated the beacon, I never imagined it would end like this. End. Sarah laughed. Kivan, this isn't an ending, it's a beginning. She looked out at the stars, seeing them with new eyes. The real question is, are you ready to start learning? Kivan's armor rippled with anticipation. I believe, Commander Chen, that you have already taught me the most important lesson. The perfect moment isn't when you reach the peak. It's when you realize there are always new heights to climb. Together, Human and Zenith stood at the threshold of a new era. The galaxy would never be the same, not because humanity had proven itself worthy of joining the galactic community, but because they had reminded an ancient empire of what it meant to truly live, to grow, to evolve. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, the original Zenith watched with satisfaction as their greatest hope was finally realized. Not the achievement of perfection, but the eternal dance of evolution, played out between species who dared to learn from each other.